Hello, everybody. Welcome to our webinar today. We're talking about one word only, clarify. You will soon learn how powerful this word is and, unfortunately, why it is missing from most every single fertility plan that at least we see in our practice and the women that come to us for the couples that come to us for support and next steps. So you'll learn it's not just a word, but really the first step in getting you success. Why we actually start here with every single person that we work with, and why our cohorts are centered around this one word. It is so powerful. Clarify. If you don't know us by now, here we are. We got all of us on here today coming at you with this webinar. You can learn more about us in our credentials and who we help on our website, yourfertilityyourfuture.com. But to save time and really make sure that we get everything in today, we're just jumping into it. All right. So we each have a couple of cases that have really stood out to us over the years that we are really just showcasing here, and really want you to understand the power of that process, that word clarify. So each one will just talk about, why they came into us, which many of them we just took a direct screenshot from their intake, why they came into us, what their questions were, what their struggles were, and how we help them to reach success by clarifying. Clarify as number one. So this is my first case, a case of primary ovarian insufficiency, which is that POI. And this is her intake. So you can read this here. I'm just going to pick out a couple big bullet points that I love about this one. So the first question, why are you pursuing a functional fertility approach? She wants to look at her root causes, feel better about her overall health, achieve improved wellness, and as well as getting ready for this next step in her life. And then a little bit about her fertility journey. She's been married for 13 years. I'm sorry, she's with her partner for 13 years, married for 5. And they've focused on their careers, right? Like many couples are and are doing, and pushing back starting a family until later. But they have started to try to conceive, and given her age and desire to get pregnant, she wanted some extra eyes. She's had some labs done, which found a high FSH, and her AMH was undetectable. So right there, anytime we're going to see that, it's going to be a little bit of a red flag, because this is really showing us that primary ovarian insufficiency picture. There is a miscommunication, kind of not great communication between the brain, the ovaries. This is, of course, going to affect ovulation. And in a standard approach to fertility, is pretty much going to be a direct referral for ART, artificial reproductive therapies. She's also had a history of UTIs. Her menstrual cycle did initially return after coming off Nexplanon, but since have become absent again. And then she also came in, really, and we understood through even starting to work with her that we're looking at some stress. She's a night shift worker. She has some metabolic concerns, which we'll get more in depth here too in a moment. And really helping her to address her primary goal of understanding those root causes to her hormone imbalances and fertility concerns, improve her overall health, and really, as she mentioned, prepare her for the next step of her life and starting and growing her family. So initially, clarify again. So when we start with somebody, we always have to start at square one. There is a lot of people are doing a lot of work downstream, which is fine. Obviously you're going to be trying things that you read about and learn about and hear about, but we always pull back to clarify, right? Because we have to understand why. Why does she have low AMH? Why is there POI in the equation to begin with? When looking at low AMH, the root causes that we are always going to be thinking about and clarifying for somebody might include, number one, stress, real and or perceived stress. What does this woman's stress picture look like? What does her life look like? If we get somebody and, we're looking and, hey, I mean, you actually have you handle your stress well. They don't feel like they're stressed. And we actually confirm that with testing, because that's also very important to get an actual data on that. Then, hey, all right, that might not be where we want to focus our efforts going forward. The second area is total toxic burden when we're thinking about POI and low AMH. And the other is autoimmunity. So those are things that we're always thinking right away if we see somebody coming in with kind of this high FSH, undetectable AMH picture. And by the way, just so we know, she, of course, is going to be referred to for IVF. By definition, a low AMH makes you not a great candidate for IVF. Okay, so this is where it's very powerful to take a pause and clarify why. Why in the first place? Why is my AMH low in the first place? And these are the top 3 reasons that we begin to clarify. And if you have questions as you go, please put them in the chat here. Our team will be monitoring that and be able to answer those as we go. We'll also have a Q&A at the end. These were the labs she came in with. So A1C, which is a metabolic marker, so elevated. We like to see this below 5. She's at 6%. One thyroid marker, which is not a full insight into her thyroid, but her TSH was 0.55, a little bit on the low end. We're thinking what's going on, not really getting that full thyroid stimulating hormone action, which is very important for follicle development and ovulation. Prolactin was a 27. We don't like to see this above a 10. This is going to directly impact ovulation. She's not cycling. So we already see some things we want to work on. LH and FSH both elevated. So very common again with POI. We want to see both these under 10. We want to see them in a good balance with each other. So again, kind of confirming what we already know with POI, that brain to ovary communication not working optimally. And of course, that AMH under 0.08. This was her chart coming in. She did ovulate. She kind of have random ovulations. She missing some cycles, but was capturing some ovulation. So just confused, where do we begin? And right away, we already with these intake labs, this is the thing with Clarify. She was just told, okay, POI, right? Like that's what you have. We can already begin to address causes of that POI with these very little. I mean, she had other intake. These are ones that really stuck out as being ones that we already know how to address and what to do about them, because these all are a part of that picture. We can already address known insufficiencies that contribute to low ovarian reserve. She had a low vitamin D too. I think I forgot to put that up. Low vitamin D, I think it was 37.8. We want to see this more around 60 to 80. High prolactin, directly impacting ovulation. Insulin resistance, although we don't have a full picture of that yet, we clearly see that her A1C is elevated. If A1C is elevated, you probably be pretty certain that some other markers are elevated as well, which we're going to talk about here in a moment. These are going to add to things like oxidative stress in the ovaries, contributing to that low AMH. So even with this, we already have some things to begin to work on, but she wanted more. We want to clarify the full picture, right? We still don't have a full understanding of those three contributors: stress, toxicants, and potential autoimmunity. So we ordered labs to show us where to actually focus for her, right? Because this is the biggest thing that Clarify, one of the biggest things that Clarify does for us. One, we see whys. Why is our current picture showing us what it is? And two, how do we streamline efforts going forward so that you're not just doing all the things that everyone else is telling you to do and you're reading about on the internet, all right? Because that is where most of us come in and pretty burn out. So we clarified some blood labs. We did order some really, again, customized panels, which we have access to do. And these are some really big findings that we found simply through understanding where she's been, what we still need to clarify, and then working on doing that. We order labs to show us how to proceed forward. We see here, we found a positive ANA. So if you remember, one of those 3 markers or 3 contributors oftentimes to a low AMH is autoimmunity. This is going to be a part of that picture. We're talking about fasting or metabolic. So her A1C at 6%, we know that's high, that needs addressed. But again, when we actually understand what labs to order outside of a traditional physician's look here, we see her fasting insulin is 36.4. We want this around 10. So we do have quite a good degree of insulin resistance. This is directly impacting ovulation, egg quality, and oxidative stress on the ovaries. Inflammation under 1 is what we want to see this at. You can see we're fourfold. Ferritin and iron marker are directly contributing to oxygen and nutrients coming to the ovaries, carrying those signals from the brain to the ovaries for ovulation and nutrient delivery. We want to see this more around a 60 to 80. Homocysteine a little bit low. This is our detoxification, talking about kind of some of that toxicant connection here. We did rule out some things as well. Autoimmunity, we do have, again, kind of a little picture of that up here, but we ruled out where we don't need to focus on, which is equally as important because her thyroid antibodies were low. Oh, and then this is where we found her low vitamin D. Again, we want this more around 40, I'm sorry, 60 to 80. Shoot, we have a lot here that we have clarified in a simple one visit, starting off her program, and then understanding where we actually need to go next. Clarify. All right, clarify. This picture is not something that I don't. I hate to say all or nothing. I'm not that person to say all or nothing or never or always, but uh, we don't see this picture coming in. All right. We don't see this is just not on the docket for a standard approach to fertility to assess these things. It is what it is. You just got to know what you want and, yeah, the path to get there. So here we see also with clarified functional labs that we added in. We did a Dutch complete and a detox, tox detect, and found again clarification on where to begin. 3 contributors to low AMH. I said them a couple times before: stress, real or perceived, tox overload, and or autoimmunity. Stress. She's an ER doctor. She works night shifts. She's probably going to be stressed. We got to explore that further. Yeah, she's pretty burnout. All right. So not only is she pretty much running low on cortisol, this is post high cortisol. We kind of come down to this low cortisol picture. She's also in conservation mode. So this is a really amazing part of the Dutch test that shows us not only are you making it and using it, but yeah, are you preserving? Is your body actually telling you, whoa, you can't run through this. What else are we going to do? We got none left. We're saving this. You can't be using this for fertility. You can't be using this to create your best estrogen and progesterone and ovulation. We have to take the reins here. Okay. Conservation mode. So huge thing that we found here. In addition to a very low melatonin, not surprised as she is again a night shift worker. But melatonin is the ovary's #1 loving antioxidant. #1. So if she has primary ovarian insufficiency, that ovarian picture needs support. It needs development right here. We know how to supplement that. This is not one where we just randomly recommend women to get on melatonin unless we know the actual need for it. This is important for egg quality, AMH, and their insulin resistance. Working on triple action here. Very cool. And then, in addition to this real and perceived stress that we are seeing, we also, in that tox detox detect profile, did find some moderate results. This is not surprising because she's in the medical field, this HEMA marker. But this can absolutely be a part of her low AMH picture, that stress on the mitochondria and the ovaries. All right. So, right away, I mean, labs. Clarify with better labs. If all of your labs are normal, if you've been told, oh, your labs are normal, well, we'll just go to the next step. Right here is a perfect example of how we can clarify that using different criteria. And then clarified her course of action and outcome. All right. So we're already working on multiple pieces of her puzzle here. She came in not knowing what to do. We found 6 areas or buckets that we can support. 6. It's usually never just one. And this is also what's so frustrating, but also so liberating. When we are able to clarify your picture and your story, is you come in thinking, well, what the heck else do I have to do? Like, I have done everything under the sun. And then when you see, oh, actually, my list was just very limited. I didn't have a full understanding of where to focus on. Now, there are so many things that I can are in my control to improve and to actually see physical improvement in that. So we're talking about hormonal and ovarian health. And I'm not going to go through all of my notes I had here on it because it might take up a lot of time. But we're talking about adrenal and stress dysregulation, metabolic health, autoimmune and immune health, nutritional and environmental factors, and circadian rhythm disruption. That's 6 right there. All right. Every single visit after we clarify, which gets into the rest of our part process, which is not what we are focusing on today, but the rebuild and the unlock. Every single visit, every single time we were working with this woman, we dive deeper into supporting every one of these buckets. And what I think is a very common finding with couples that we work with is you don't have to get perfect on every single bucket. It's not about fixing every single one of these. It's about supporting all of these a little bit each at a time, and that is removing that stress on your fertility. All right. This is both male and female factor. All right. So also we're doing the same thing on the male side simultaneously. But every time we're bringing specific support from her real-time fam charts, we're bringing in adjusting her macronutrients for her day to day. She has a very tough schedule to even eat at all in a clinical setting, in an emergency setting in the hospital. So giving her this crazy, ridiculous diet to follow is not going to work. All right. I had to adjust that for her day to day. Refining micronutrients, things like glutathione, vitamin Z, B6 to support everything we found. For her, we cut her supplements she was taking in half. And in her case, she is now 8 weeks pregnant. So this is just one example of clarify how that begins from the beginning and carries the whole way through. Carrie, Kaylee, do you think I missed anything on that one?
I don't think so.
Cool.
No, that was
All right.
great.
We're going to keep rocking and rolling. These are a little bit shorter because I want to make sure Carrie and Kaylee have some amazing ones. This I call it IVF investigation, with which just so happens to be Carrie. She has a brand new service for this IVF investigation, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But this is one woman and one case that we helped clarify with the help of Carrie's incredible new tracker that she's made for people who are in this type of visit. But here you go. You can see why this woman came to us: 40 low egg reserve, 4 rounds of IVF, really poor results with every single one of them. And just really wants better answers, like where am I going next. Her doctor recommended egg donor, and although she's not opposed to that, she wants to see how she can set herself up for success in either, yes, going on to egg donor next, or not needing that because she either doesn't need IVF or she even gets pregnant without IVF. So again, many opportunities that we can open up when we step back and clarify. So, really, for her, this one we're just getting going on. All right. So, we don't have that whole outline story like I did with the first case. This one, she just wants flat out better answers. She's like, I don't, where, what even does this all mean? And that's a very common finding that we have in these IVF investigation visits is these women are just like, I have all of this potential information buried in books of records, and yet I'm told that just, keep going and do another round or do donor. But something just feels like I'm missing something, right? They're missing clarification. They're missing what is going on, why. We just need flat out better answers. For our very first visit, this is what we did. We spent an hour talking about why. Why are we having low AMH? Again, kind of like that prior clarify case you saw, those 3 reasons. Why are we having a poor response to IVF? I think that for her, There's many things that we discovered in a very first visit that were never even addressed. Number one, she took birth control for 20 years. So she has had long term suppression of ovulation signaling, likely why she's got that low AMH, likely why we are also having a poor response. Another, um, we'll say it is a theory right now, right? Because that's oftentimes where we just kind of have to start is theory until we get testing. She's doing all of her testing now. She's gathering that data. With her story, I believe that she has very low estrogen. She did take Clomid for a couple cycles and had a very poor mood reaction. This is low, I mean, vitality, just hot flashes was a physical reaction. She just felt very off, not herself. Bitter, angry. I mean, this is a common reaction we see to Clomid when estrogen drops too low, likely because you had too low of estrogen to begin with. She had a very slow response to IVF meds and had to sim for 15 days on a high dose medication. And she has a GI autoimmune disorder that is affecting absorption of her nutrients. Okay. So all of these things are a part of her why. Again, as we get better testing back, we're clarifying. She's actually working with Carrie right now to fill out Carrie's incredible IVF investigation tracker that basically takes all of the data from her IVF rounds, puts it in there, and really sorts through that information that's just buried in all of these papers. So we are still in the active investigation of clarifying her case. But again, she understands that this is in preparation for anything that comes next for her. She's willing to actually push back a little bit, next steps, and really take time to understand this, implement change. And in the meantime, why the poor response to IVF? Why these things? We have her getting tests at her clinic that they had never even thought to run before. So she's there working simultaneously with her clinic to rule out things like endometriitis. And we also are doing a vaginal microbiome test because when we're talking about poor response to IVF, we have to think, what does that uterine environment look like? Is there inflammation? Is there dysbiosis? Is there infection? No one's done any of this. This should, in our minds, and I think Carrie, you even went as far to say, like, this should really be done before any IVF, right? Like, we need to look at the uterine environment before the first round of IVF. She's on 4, and this hasn't even been addressed. All right. So, even without clarified blood labs, clarified functional labs, she already has so many more answers than she's ever had in her case and in her story. She's now working with both her case and her husband as well, with John, our male fertility specialist. And this is just in one visit. All right. So this one, you'll have to wait and see what happens. But a very, I think, just so powerful example, and why I used it is because she has been through so much and she has no answers, just none. And this is what unfortunately we find with many women who go through multiple rounds of IVF is that they are left just with, well, I have no freaking idea what to do. All right. All right. And last one, I'm going to keep this quick. PCOS. PCOS, irregular periods since she was 12. She was a athlete all her life, informally diagnosed with PCOS. Her parents experienced infertility, which is always something that we think about because PCOS and even endometriosis do have some genetic link. Labs were always kind of, a little bit off, but nothing super crazy. She's been trying to conceive for 2 to 3 years, no positive test ever. Okay. So, of course, she went to the clinic, and within 15 minutes, they told her to do IVF, and she just found that a little off putting. She's like, you know what? Okay, well, maybe, but I just want better answers, right? Clarify. She actually has her whole video testimony that she shared with us and is willing to share with our following. So we do have that as part of our fertility library. If you're not part of the fertility library, it's free. It's got so much information in there. Whenever you get to it, Kaylee can share that link for people. She'll share a link for the library and then also a direct link once you're logged in there and enrolled to this testimony. But her cycles were an average of 60 to 120 days. All right. So obviously some irregularity, PCOS, likely the biggest contribution to that. She tried metformin as per her clinic's recommendation a year and a half ago. Didn't really do much. She stopped because it didn't make her feel good. She had some GI upset with that, which is actually very common.
I was gonna
Um,
say with that metformin that she actually had not high, like her blood sugar was actually kind of low. So doing that was actually probably doing more harm in her body than good. And no one thought to just stop and check in on that. Like it made her very, very shaky, irritated in between meals. She clearly was getting significant blood crashes from that. And so it's kind of crazy to us that they were telling her to continue with it, and she was like, "It doesn't feel good, so I'm not going to." So we really commended her for that.
Yeah, and that's a clue, right? That tells us, see, in a clinic's approach, it's like, well, you're PCOS, so this will help you. She doesn't have typical PCOS labs, which we'll see in a moment. And when we heard that, like Carrie's saying, that's information that her body is giving us, not just something to be ignored. She has hypoglycemic episodes on metformin, which means something else is happening. Not, oh yeah, well, I don't know, you have PCOS, so that's what you do, right? This is part of the clarification process as well, not brushing off these symptoms that are a part of a very important part of your story. She used to have throat closing anxiety with her work, in her words. She also has tracked her cycles with Aura and Natural Cycles for over a year and a half. She came to us and she said, I'm done with LH strips, which we are all about, especially for PCOS. So she did come with some great cycles already, which is great. And that's our preferred method of cycle tracking is Aura and Natural Cycles. So I love that she was kind of already, understanding, learning, kind of letting go of some things that she may have been told before and kind of stepping into doing it on her own. Intake labs, a couple things stood out here. So again, PCOS, oftentimes we see with PCOS testosterone being high. Hers was within normal limits. We see insulin being high. Hers was within normal limits, which was that part of that hypoglycemic picture. Her even some of her FSH, LH, which is that brain to ovary communication for ovulation, some within normal, some were not. Prolactin was within normal, which also we see affected in on PCOS, and we also ruled out non-congenital, no, sorry, non-classical congenital adrenal hyperplasia with a 17-OH progesterone, which the reason why I included that is because that oftentimes looks very similar to PCOS. So we do want to do our due diligence in ruling that out. Low vitamin D, high AMH, which is an indication of PCOS, and also, again, varying LH levels as well. What we wanted to do, again, for her clarification, is bring in some better labs. All right. We actually saw very low estrogen and progesterone. This is her Dutch right here on her Dutch, which is not uncommon. I mean, I was not surprised with this. If you're not cycling, you're probably going to have very low estrogen and progesterone. Interestingly enough, her testosterone was also within normal limits, but there's a caveat coming. She had high, oh, wait. Her overall testosterone marker was within normal limits. However, the one amazing part of the Dutch test is that we actually see testosterone metabolites, which means the different forms that testosterone and other hormones can kind of go into. And her DHT, which is the most potent form of testosterone, was high. So this actually does kind of contribute to her PCOS picture, even though she's not the classic where all of her testosterone is high. She also had oh, why I keep doing that. She also had very low melatonin. Sorry, I will get there. And stress. There we go. Melatonin up here, And I mean, look at this melatonin. Oh my goodness, like so low. And talk about depleted. That throat closing anxiety for years with her job. Of course, the number on her nervous system. She was not making a lot of cortisol. She's not using a lot of cortisol. We also found very low B6, which is very much important for ovulation. So, really, with her, clarifying was the biggest piece of the puzzle. We worked with her again. You can see her full testimony. I'm not going to really go into the specifics of her rebuild and unlock because it's different for everybody. We did cyclical support with her, working on understanding, even with her irregular cycles, how to support that low estrogen, how to support that low progesterone, and really understanding how to, with a lot of back and forth and constant support and contact with those irregular cycles, how to bring that in. And she got pregnant on day 72 of her cycle. So, a really great clarifying example of one, understanding hidden symptoms, what they're meaning, even if they're brushed off by your practitioner. And two, you don't have to be perfect to get pregnant. Our goal with her was never to have perfect 28 to 32-day cycles. It was to understand her own cyclical pattern with her irregular PCOS cycles to actually capture ovulation, have intimacy around that time, of course, because that's a tricky thing with PCOS is like you just don't know when. So track her cycles, understand when to capture her fertile window, and then bring in that cyclical support to not only support that estrogen before ovulation, but the progesterone after, and continue to support that in her early days of pregnancy. So I love that case. You can see her story there. All right. I'm finished up. If anybody, again, questions, bring them here. We'll love to just hear your thoughts on these and kind of just, yeah, if you have any that come up on your own journey. But we're going to keep on rock and rolling with a few more cases. And this is Carrie, so I'll hand it to her.
Okay, so this is our IVF warrior. She pretty much struggled to conceive, like she started conceiving right away with her husband, around their wedding. Struggled for a year, so then, obviously went to clinic to get the workup. After that, I did identify some hypothyroidism at that time, and did start her on levothyroxine, so the Synthroid, the traditional support, the go-to medication for hypothyroidism. And they also found male factor infertility. So they basically said, there's really no other option but going IVF. So they did it. They had two unsuccessful egg retrievals, meaning that when they got to, they did get some eggs, but as the whole process unfolded with, the fertilization and growing the embryos into blastocysts, they did some genetic testing and they did not have any genetically normal embryos, which is a whole nother discussion for another day. But it's not something that we put a terrible amount of weight into, is the Cliff Note version. They did continue with another egg retrieval. They did get a genetically normal embryo, but the transfer was unsuccessful. Um, she had been working with several different clinics. So her whole story was kind of scattered about through multiple clinics and multiple different files and multiple doctors. In fact, her care team was changing so much and no one really had defined roles that her thyroid medication dose actually slipped through the cracks. No, there was no one doctor managing it. No one owned that. Extremely dangerous, in my opinion. So that became a issue that we later clarified. So I'll circle back to that in a moment. But basically, when she came to us, when we looked into her history, there was no one asking the question, like, why is your thyroid off? Why do you have these other symptoms that are, pretty significant? Why are we just jumping right to IVF? Why don't we maybe, dig a little deeper here? Olivia, next slide. It's okay.
Is this
Um,
it?
the next one or the back one.
Okay, one moment.
It's
Okay,
okay.
here we go. This was the one we were on. And
Yeah,
now, I think my cursor's just okay. Nope, not that one.
the next, yeah, this one. Perfect.
Okay.
So this is what she told us right when we met. This is from her intake form. So multiple cycles. She just didn't know where to turn. She did a lot of research into functional fertility and just wanted to understand her root causes, correct hormone imbalances, inflammation, egg quality, digestion, nutrient deficiencies, strengthen her body, improve sleep, digestion, metabolism, stress, and energy, and fertility. And the reason I'm reading you off all of those things is because I really do want to recommend or commend her for identifying all of those issues because all of those are present in her case, which is part of like what we clarified, but just her being able to trust her gut and know that those were some of her key issues here, um, is incredibly powerful and just goes to show that her intuition is spot on. Um, so we were so glad that she had found us because, when I met with her, she was very burnout from this entire process. They paid all of those rounds of IVF that I mentioned completely out of pocket. They were exhausted. No one doctor was actually, sitting with them and trying to understand what would be best for them going forward. She was just a number and getting lost in the system that is the fertility clinics. Next slide. So here's what we clarified. Um, just on the intake labs and her IVF files, this is what we still haven't done a lot of our own testing yet on her. We've only had one session together, but this is already what we've clarified just in one session and all of her intake labs. Um, Mentioned, fragmented thyroid history. It swung from 14, shouldn't be over 2.5 for fertility, swung up to 14 and down to undetectable during the time that she was doing IVF. So during active cycles, that's what her TSH was. And multiple doctors were just trying to adjust her medicine or just completely ignoring it. She should have never done IVF with any of the TSHs that I've seen in her files. She had no business doing IVF. And to me, it's like beyond malpractice that they even did that. Um, no one looked at her antibodies until we did. They were through the roof. Honestly, I think all three of us can say some of the highest we've ever seen. Full on autoimmune hypothyroidism. So we're doing IVF on someone whose immune system could possibly be attacking the pregnancy, could be attacking her own body. She was not getting any immune support because no one ever looked for this. Um, so extremely frustrating. Nervous system dysregulation. She had poor sleep, anxiety. She was very burnt out. She's literally told me I used to be a carefree person, and now I just feel like a shell of who I used to be, which is devastating to hear, especially if a fertility journey shouldn't do that to you. It does do that to us. We're not alone in that, but it's not fair. Gut health was struggling a lot. Daily bloating to the point where she woke up and felt like she was still healing from eating the day before, which is wild. Especially because, a lot of us, if we have bloating, we wake up in the morning and we don't have that much bloating. It kind of like as the day goes on, a lot of people report signs of bloating, as they go about their day. She still had it overnight from the day before. Yellow and loose stools, food reactivity. She was sensitive to certain foods. Noticed like GI upset, or other symptoms from certain foods, and estrogen recycling concerns. Basically, we were wondering what was happening in her gut, with what's called the estrobolome, which is where your gut kind of packages up estrogen and processes it to get excreted through stool usually. And we were thinking that based on her gut picture, there was probably some recycling going on there, which we didn't want and could have been driving up estrogen in a not so good way. She had deficiencies from poor absorption and years of being vegetarian. Um, she had signs of definite need for lymphatic and histamine support. She has heat intolerance and experiences swelling, sometimes even after just eating certain foods. Her hands and legs will swell. So definitely needed to support that. She had no active progesterone support after all of this time, which is wild. The only time that she was ever given progesterone was after that one transfer. Um, no other cycle. She needed it. Severe ovulation pain to the like dis can't think of the word. It was very intense.
Dysmenorrhea.
What'd you say?
Dysmenorrhea.
No, like I don't know. I can't think of the word. Um, her ovulation pain was so bad that, she had to kind of like just sit and focus on trying to get out of that pain. It just completely like life-changing. Um, so we were thinking, we haven't ruled out endometriosis here, so we wanted to check that. She also, this just in, our latest update was that she's had chronic endometritis and they are not doing anything about it. So she has chronic infection in the lining of her uterus, and they said there's nothing they can do, which is not true. There's plenty we can do. And so, anyway, I'll just leave it at that. Next slide, Olivia. Okay, so where are we now? Stay tuned because that was just our first session. So, we have identified a lot of areas that we need to work on, and we are still clarifying the best path forward. Like I said, she is a newer client, therefore she's still doing her Dutch test right now. And we have some other recommended labs that we are going to send her for as well. So, we are still clarifying the best next step for all of these different issues, but we do have her already started on some foundational thyroid, gut, and adrenal support, just to get her a little bit more comfortable during this process. But here's what she said after our first session together. Thank you. Her biggest takeaway is that her body is not as normal and healthy as she thought it was. I honestly didn't think I had so many of my reports would be abnormal or that I had full-blown Hashimoto's, but I'm glad it's caught sooner rather than later and we can begin working on improving her health. So she had no idea that all of these things were going on and was considering doing another round of IVF. Obviously, they came to us because they didn't want to just keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result. But no one in the conventional side was going to address any of this stuff for her. So she is just an example of someone who's so, so, so strong, and really proud of her for trusting her intuition, coming to us and starting to get started going with this root cause work. Next case is our ovulation illusion. So this woman got off birth control. She had super long and irregular cycles. Her OB treated her with Provera, which is basically like a form of progesterone that can kind of like induce a period. It basically causes like a withdrawal bleed, which they use as kind of like a way to reset your cycle if you're having super long cycles or super long bleeds or a variety of different abnormalities with your cycle. And they basically told her, like she's fine. And they offered her Clomid. Um, which, in their defense, their thought process there was, well, if we're having a lot of irregular cycles and a delayed ovulation, let's use Clomid to move that ovulation up and have a little bit more control. But why don't we look at maybe why that's happening before just trying to slap some medicine on it and use it as a band-aid to try and control her cycle? She was diagnosed with PCOS via ultrasound. She did not have insulin resistance. She actually had low blood sugar, which I'll talk about more in a second. And testosterone was elevated. She was working with a naturopath who did identify some nutritional deficiencies and low progesterone. Naturopath encouraged her to take progesterone every day of her cycle for a year, which she did, for the low progesterone. And she was wondering why that entire year she did not conceive. Um, And no one took the time to really tell her, think about like why her body wasn't ovulating regularly, why she had these nutritional deficiencies. It was all like, let's just kind of throw something at the problem and try and override it. Next slide. No worries. So she didn't have, classic PCOS to us. There wasn't extreme metabolic dysfunction. It was actually the flip side of it from low blood sugar, which can actually mimic some of the um, symptoms that we see in PCOS. So essentially, the low blood sugar is going to still stimulate the ovaries to make a lot of follicles and try and get more. Recruit more eggs to mature. And they're going to put out more testosterone locally. So this is something that we see a lot actually in our women with PCOS is this low blood sugar or low insulin, low HbA1c, and the typical PCOS symptoms. So this was more so driven by chronic underfueling and long-term birth control, so long-term hormone suppression. Prolactin was elevated, not surprising with PCOS, but that can suppress ovulation. So, we had the conversation like, is ovulation off and prolactin getting elevated? Is prolactin elevated and throwing ovulation off? It's a chicken or the egg. We don't know, but let's address it. Um, Her doctors did know about this, did not address it. Thyroid wasn't that bad, so it was hinting at conservation mode with her reverse T3, but we were not going to put all of our energy. That wasn't the biggest fish to fry. So we just kind of kept a pulse on that. Her charts were showing follicular phase temp and luteal phase temp being the same with a dip in the middle around where ovulation, her body was trying to ovulate. So to us, we were seeing in a chart like that, her brain to ovary signaling just needed some work. Like there was kind of like mixed signals and some confusion. So maybe some interference we just wanted to work on. Gut needed help. Floating yellow stools, which to us means she needs help with some absorption. She had a high toxic load. She lived and worked on a farm. So we really had to think about how to help her kind of reduce that burden without telling her to move and change her job. And perfectionism and high stress load were not making things easier by any means. Next slide. So we reframed her journey to, it's not PCOS and Clomid, it's just under recovered hypothalamic functioning. She started on our macro trio protocol, so balancing fat, proteins, and carbs specifically for her and what her body needs. Um, she started eating more to really support that signaling and just make her body understand that there were enough nutrients on board to ovulate correctly, to come out of that conservation mode. We started her on a bedtime snack to help her keep blood sugar stable overnight, which actually helped to get her better and deeper sleep. So she wasn't waking up and sleeping so lightly at night, which is going to also help her hormones and help her healing and toxic load as well. Because her body, we heal when we sleep. We supported her detox system with specific lifestyle changes and nutrition for her and her situation. We began intuitive progesterone cycling. So she was not taking it every day of her cycle because that was blocking ovulation. That can block ovulation. So that's why she did not get pregnant for that year that she did that. But what I mean by intuitive progesterone cycling is, typical progesterone cycling is 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. Because we had delayed ovulation, we didn't really know when she was going to be ovulating. We wanted to give her body a little bit of time to do that on its own. So if she started taking it day 14, like, typical progesterone cycling is recommended, she could have blocked ovulation and not conceived that cycle. So we set a good cadence for her of how many weeks on and how many weeks off. And then I also still encourage her, like, use your own nutrition. If you feel like you're really close to ovulation, don't start the progesterone. Message me, send us your charts. Let's decide it in real time. Gave her some gentle digestion support as well. She was making sure to slow down when she was eating, chew her food. That alone helped her stools. That alone, like that's all she had to do to reverse her stool symptoms, and GI symptoms. So she's digesting better, she's pooping better, she's sleeping more, she's noticing more cervical mucus, no longer afraid of food, and she's using it to reclaim her cycle. Next slide. Okay, so this is an updated chart from her. So you can see, yeah, sure, it's not like a perfect chart, but it is a lot better than, super irregular cycles of 60, 70, 90 days. We are now having consistent 34 to 37 day cycles, with ovulation being around the 20 to 24 day cycles. So this is amazing. So she's stayed consistent. Her nervous system is a lot better off. Her charts are looking amazing. Her prolactin has already dropped from 30 to 8.3 in just a matter of 7 or 8 weeks. And she's feeling very confident. She's said right here, eating enough is better than eating perfect. I can keep going back to that when I start overthink about what I should eat. So just super, super powerful takeaways from her. Um, so yeah, and I will pass it over to Kaylee.
All right. Okay. So I'm going to go through this one a little fast so we can be mindful of time, get you guys some information on a special offer, and take questions at the end. But this is our case number 6. This is a case of non-classical endometriosis. So this woman came to us. She had been wanting more for her fertility journey. She had recently been diagnosed with endometriosis, and she had done an excision surgery. And she had always dealt with GI issues since she was young. We are always thinking about what is going on with the gut when we know someone has confirmed endometriosis, because they are neighbors, the uterus and the gut. And so what happens in the gut doesn't stay there, unfortunately, and can affect that uterine cavity, inflammation levels there, and of course, implantation. So she had some night wakings between 2 and 3 a.m. Her luteal phase needed a little bit of support. It was around 11 days, and she did have some PMS symptoms. She had high stress, sometimes too stressed even to eat, unable to confirm ovulation. She did have diagnosed hypothyroidism, and her levothyroxine dose had been increasing year over year. That also signals to us something's going on in the gut. The gut is really responsible for a lot of thyroid hormone conversion. So when we see someone needing a bigger thyroid medication dose over time, it shows us that something is going on with the thyroid and the gut that we need to take a closer look at here. She also used NSAIDs before her period because she had heavy bleeding and she had a lot of pain associated with that period. She had previously been treated with triple antibiotic therapy for H. pylori and gastroenteritis, bloating and gas that peaked in the late afternoon, early satiety, and some bowel movements had hallmarks of fat maldigestion. So tan, greasy appearance, ribbon shake, and early satiety. Next slide. And so here are her intake labs on the left. We noted that she had low white blood cells, and this was consistent over the prior few years of labs. And so when we see that, we always think about gut and toxins kind of burdening the immune system function here. Her TSH was 2.73, which is a little bit higher than we like to see it for fertility. We really want to see it below 2.5, ideally between 1 and 2 for most folks. Her hemoglobin was low, so we think nutrients. Is she eating enough nutrients? Is she absorbing enough nutrients? Probably more of the latter for her, given just what we know about her gut symptoms so far. Her alkaline phosphatase was borderline low. That can be a marker, a surrogate marker for a need for more zinc. So again, is she taking in enough zinc, or is she not absorbing the zinc that she's eating in her food here? We did look at some food tracking for her and saw that she was indeed eating enough zinc. She actually was eating a good amount of food despite that early satiety. She was really, really working on that. So that kind of reinforces for us, we need to take a deeper look at what is going on in the gut and see why she may not be absorbing all of this wonderful food she is eating. New blood labs here. She had never had her thyroid antibodies looked at, and we did confirm they were a little bit higher than we want to see them with that TPO at 14. So she had a little bit of that autoimmunity activation. Her free T3 was low. That can again be kind of tied back to the gut and that conversion of T4 to T3 here. Her reverse T3 was high, so her body is saying, I am not converting this to the active thyroid hormone well, likely due to that high stress load she was under. Can also be physiological stress too. So if she has a gut infection, if she has other imbalances going on here with some of that autoimmunity, that can also put the pressure on the body to convert that into the inactive thyroid hormone form where we really want to see it into that active free T3. And then homocysteine 9.1, a little high here, and that can also signal some nutrient needs or nutrient absorption issues if she's eating them but not absorbing them. Next slide. Okay, so we ran 2 labs on her to help clarify her story more for her. We did a GI map stool test. We found multiple overgrowths, very low commensal bacteria. H. pylori in and of itself can be connected to low stomach acid, which can be really the explaining reason why she's not absorbing her zinc, absorbing B12, selenium that the thyroid needs here for that hormone conversion. She also had some of that fat malabsorption sign in her stool, which can also be related back to all the way up the digestive secretion chain to that H. pylori, dampening that stomach acid function. If we can't absorb fats in our diet, then we cannot produce enough hormones. And so we actually saw that in her Dutch cycle map. Instead of the classic high estrogen picture we usually see with endometriosis, we saw overall low estrogen and low testosterone. And so if we had not looked at this, someone might have said, oh, you have endometriosis, time to do some DIM, time to do all of these estrogen suppressing measures, which would have made this particular woman worse. So really, really important here to have someone that's going to connect the dots and really understand when we need to look a little bit deeper at hormone testing versus just blind you, put you on very strong supplements like DIM without really seeing the full picture of your hormones here. We also saw a little bit of progesterone resistance in her case. This is very common in endometriosis. And so while that seems like, oh, high progesterone on this test, that's great, she was still having PMS symptoms. Her luteal phase length was still not optimal here. So we need to help her body to be more receptive to that progesterone she's producing. And actually, we helped her do that on the next slide, which we'll talk about here, to help actually her cells recognize that progesterone instead of it just kind of circulating around and not being active here. Next slide. Okay, so clarified course of action. Obviously, we need to support this estrogen and testosterone production, not lower it. And then gut healing. We need to really focus on gut healing here to help her stabilize her thyroid hormone conversion, decrease that autoimmunity that's happening in her thyroid right now, absorb her precursors for those sex hormones, that dietary fat, and help to stabilize the immune system. So outcomes. So since we've begun working with this client here, we have stabilized her levothyroxine dose. Her TSH is now within an optimal level and she's not needing to increase that hormone dose to keep it there. She's able to identify ovulation, comfortable with FAM tracking. Now she can really identify her fertile window more confidently, so she knows when to time intercourse. Bloating has reduced by 50%. She said she no longer feels like she looks 6 months pregnant at the end of the day. Obviously not a way we want to look or feel when we're trying to get pregnant and having some challenges doing so. And then she was able to eat more nourishing food at each meal. So that early satiety we were able to address with some digestive support. And then we helped her advocate for a progesterone prescription that she's doing a vaginal suppository for, which is going to help her to overcome some of that progesterone resistance. And that progesterone resistance can be related to inflammation. So all of that gut healing we're doing too is going to down the road help her body to be more receptive to that progesterone. So it's not something she's going to need on and on and on here to get that progesterone action, but it's something to help with some of these symptoms in the short term while we continue to address her root causes. Next slide. Olivia, I don't know if we want to skip the next case, so we have time for some Q&A here, and so we can talk about the special offer.
Let's see. We are at an hour. Maybe we'll do a little bonus. Thanks for coming on, Veronica. Yeah, maybe we'll do a little bonus and do this case as a bonus and add it on to here, so we can just be aware of people's times. I think that's a good idea, Kaylee. So okay. So because I want to be able to share that one as well, but we will add that on at the end. So Yeah, Kaylee's talking about cohort. I know a couple of you here are already in the VIP list for the cohort, which is incredible, and just really getting an insight into the Clarify process that you are about to begin. So next week is our first day of the cohort, beginning of our first 8-week cohort classes. And so this is just, I'm not going to go through every single one of these. These are some really incredible things that cohort members in the past have had to say about their experience. And really redefining this idea of success is very important for every single person that we work with. Yes, we want every single one of you to get pregnant, but we also want you to have clarity, empowerment, and encouragement all along the way, understanding what's going on in your own body, in your own journey, not only to help us to have success in our fertility, but in our overall wellness and health and future. We're your fertility, your future for a reason. It's really looking at the whole big picture that, as you can see from a lot of these clarification examples, these things are just not addressed in a standard approach. Again, no right or wrong, but just know that if just know what you're getting when you sign up for that. And I'll give a caveat to that of what to expect when you sign on with us. Sir, please do not do the cohort if you want to just come on and say like, all right, well, tell me what's wrong with me and I'm going to do X, Y, and Z and get pregnant. That's not how it works. That is not how a functional approach to fertility works, as you probably gleaned and hopefully gleaned from this webinar, and why clarification is so, so important in taking a step back, taking time to clarify and understand and actually see what is going on, so then we know how to move forward on your own timeline to then go to rebuild and unlock. So this is just a little of our website, all information you need on the cohort that's coming up starting next week there. And then the program itself does come with curriculum, as you can see here, on an app that makes it very, very easy to follow along and work through your curriculum at your own pace. Take advantage of our weekly calls and the 24/7 support that is offered there in that community. Kaylee has shared the cohort sign up here. And Kaylee, what dates should people be aware of for cohort? Because we're coming up quickly here, but there's a couple dates that they want to really be aware of. Do you want to share those?
Am I back? Okay. July 13th. So end of the day, July 13th is when you have to submit your deposit by. That is going to actually lock in the cheapest price that we offer ever anywhere on the cohort. So to get in the most affordably as you can, definitely submit your deposit by the end of that day. And then you'll finish registration beginning the 14th for cohort. So you'll be all ready to go at that point. So July 13th is the magic date to keep in your mind here.
Amazing. And as she mentioned, that's the only, we don't play around with like last minute discounts. And, if you're waiting till the end, we don't do that. Okay. That's just not our vibe. So this is the only discount that's available. And you also get entered to win a free Dutch test, which is pretty amazing. It's over a $500 value. You also start chatting with our team privately there in a VIP chat. So you can start getting going on, gathering your labs, understanding what labs you might want to order as part of the process. It's always optional. You don't have to. But you'll get direct access to our lab shop to get going with that without even having to step foot in your doctor's office and play that game. So lots of really great perks there. Carrie, anything that we're missing here that you would like to add about our cohort starting next week?
Just the fact that, it does, in prior years it hasn't, but going forward now it does offer 2 sessions. So it is definitely personalized. You do a lot of work in the first 4 weeks to help collect information that we sit through and look through for every single one of you. We pair you with the best person on our team out of the three of us who we think would help you would get the most value out of working with. And you get a full strategy session with a protocol and a follow-up session in the last half of the cohort, which is invaluable. It is literally the cheapest way to work with us is to do the cohort and get those 2 sessions. Separately, I mean, a session with us plus a follow-up, and everything that you get with the curriculum and meal plans and all the things. This is a steal. So take advantage of
Yeah.
it. And we're able to offer it at this price because it is a group program. So I hope to see all of you there. Would love to work with all of you. And if you're on this webinar or watching this at any point, obviously you are not getting the answers that you deserve and that you need. And that's literally what we love to do. That is our favorite part of working with people, is trying to get them answers. So sign up for the cohort.
Wonderful. And we hope to see you there. I just did an Instagram live, one last thing, with our male fertility specialist, John, this morning. So that's on our Instagram. And he has now contributed an entire new section to the cohort for men only, which is huge. This has been a request from prior cohort members to kind of, yes, we do cover sperm health optimization in the standard curriculum, but to have more of an involvement from the men, not just with the physical nutritional changes, but like the support, the emotional side. So John has actually created a really amazing program called the Fertility Partner Program. And that will also be a part of the cohort as an add-on. And so it's just a very cool opportunity to also get a strategy session for your man with John, and 3 group calls in addition to the cohort, 8 calls that we're on for men only, working with a male physician, because let's be real, like it's different. All right. So they get to talk one-on-one with John. You guys are with, it's really, yeah, we're bringing it all for you. So, all right. Well, I know we could talk forever. I feel like I'm always just out to coffee with all my gal pals when I'm doing these things. But thank you so much for all jumping on in your time. I want to be respectful of that, as it's your most precious resource. And if you have questions, reach out to any one of us. Instagram, real quick. Me, I'm at Your Fertility, Your Future. Kaylee, can they find you?
Functional fertility research.
And Carrie?
I'm functional fertility coach.
So we all got different things in our pages, different, different information. Follow us, ask us questions, get in our DMs there. It's just us. Okay. We run our pages. It's not like, we don't have other people doing that for us. That's us. So reach out and we will see you guys there, and hopefully see you in the cohort.